Hey class, this video will hopefully help you make the Stage 3 paper a little bit easier. Two students have written to me asking for advice on how to write the Stage 3 paper, and their examples might be helpful to the rest of you. Walter Wilson is tracing the motif of flying from the early origins in black magic and folk stories, all the way up to the current release of the film on the Tuskegee Airmen. So he was wondering how would he relate that to voodoo, Ashe, NOI, and humanism. So NOI being the Nation of Islam. That's a good question. Here's my suggestion. If you recall Yvonne Chareau's description of conjure as a tradition that provided an alternative moral universe for the black community, a moral universe with the power to protect and free people from the insane moral universe of plantation culture, then you can think about, that's one of my favorite lines. Do I have her right here, Black Magic? I think it's on page 17. And she describes the alternative moral universe that conjure helped develop and create. Stories about people who could fly away from the insanity provided inspiration to raise oneself free of the insanity of their world. So that one of the collections that Walter is working with is a collection of folk stories called The People Could Fly, right? And so when these stories start taking to flight, this flight is a flight that is going to protect them from against the evil they're experiencing. And it suggests a world in which the moral universe exists and they survive compared to this grounded, and think about the kind of physical work they were doing, world in which the moral universe fails to protect them. When Pinn wrote each of his chapters, he concluded them with a discussion of theodicy, right? And theodicy is the official name that means, what does this tradition do with the problem of evil? He described how each tradition provided an answer to the problem of evil. So that was part of his organizing motif, is he would tell you about each tradition and conclude with the problem of evil. That sets him up structurally for a very nice book where you get a kind of postcard contrast between how each tradition solves the problem of evil. So I wondered whether Walter couldn't focus his discussion of the Pinn material by contrasting how each tradition provided a flight from the mundane, insane, immoral universe. The voodoo spirits transcend space and time, arriving in the midst of the human community to create the experience of the divine in the world. Awareness of Ashe and the Orishas bring African royalty into the bodies and lives of African Americans. Nation of Islam provided a story of the origin of evil and promises of future redemption. Humanism, in a way, fights against flight. It grounds humans in their human potential, but nevertheless describes the guiding transcendent concepts like justice, right? It's not like I can put justice in my hand. It is a concept that guides the human's path, ethical path through life. All right, so that's a quickie on Walters. And then here for Chris Wilson, it's the two Wilsons wrote to me. What do you figure on that? His final focus is on humanism in African American religious culture. So specifically, I asked if he could describe voodoo, Ashe, and NOI as sister discourses of the 20th century that create alternate moral universes. So though humanism grounds itself in human potential and empirical evidences, are they nevertheless, are these traditions nevertheless sister discourses of the 20th century, in that each of them creates a moral universe in which the African American has a central existence, central significance. So I wondered if he might even be able to identify what are the transcendent or universal virtues or concepts in humanism that equate to the ideals found in the transcendent sphere of the other traditions. Is justice represented in each tradition? Is the power of memory represented in each tradition? So, how about the inherent worth of human beings as a guiding concept? So I wondered, are the ideals of humanism simply less anthropocentric, a little bit less vivid, but nevertheless, are they attributed with the power to inspire and influence human behavior? So is justice, could one relate the idea of justice to a Loa or an Orisha who arrives as an administrator of justice in the community? Does the justice of humanism also, is it given the attributed with the power to guide and influence human behavior? So I know it's tough to tackle this link between your focus and a paragraph on each of these traditions, but if you focus your thesis well enough, then you can present a postcard version of each of these other traditions' 20th century developments as it relates to your thesis. So in a way, you might think of this as kind of a postcard essay. Give me the postcard of what your final paper is going to be, and then relate that postcard, illustrate how you have read the PN materials, illustrate a postcard version of each of these traditions, identifying that thread that you can pick up in each, so that by the time you hit your concluding paragraph, we understand how your focus actually does have some kind of connection to the broader context of 20th century developments, African American religious culture. In Walter's case, he'll look at the metaphor of flight in each tradition as a response to an insane moral order. In Chris's case, he can compare humanism's concepts with the animating forces of each of the traditions, comparing justice with the Loas, Orishas, and Allah's plan for Black redemption, according to the NOI. So by week 14, you're writing your rough draft of 10 to 15 pages and writing a 3-page review of one other person's rough draft. I'll respond to those as quickly as I can so that you have the benefit of my feedback and your classmates' review for the final paper. Hope this was a little bit of help. Bye.